Chris, I think we broke a record this morning.
Everything worked?
Everything worked, but you got on literally like less than maybe a minute ago and we hit record.
Oh, you're talking about the
I'm talking about the time before you hit record where you talk about, how are the kids, what's going on, all our displeasure and problems and all that stuff. Today, you walked in onto the screen. I'm like, "Hey, you said you could hear me. Let's do this." I hit record. So, hey, I think we broke a record.
it's is that the criteria, some of the criteria for being labeled a pro? You just kind of walk in the cleanup batter. You know what you got to do. You got the job. You got to get in there, get that thing done.
I don't know about that, but I do know that it speaks to, I guess, our relationship in terms of comfort level and being able to just jump into the podcast. But if you wanna take it down the road of the whole pro thing, I'm good with that too.
It's I think we played with this, right? We talked about this. I would love to be the guy that can say, yes, back in episode 2. I can't do that, but we played with this, talking about sometimes removing the clutter. And in removing the clutter, some people might argue, but you're pulling the polish off it. You're taking the wrapping paper off the gift a little bit too much. And I think, I made reference to that journey person's curve of being, an apprentice within hospitality. And I can remember a time when I first started cooking, it was all about fusing all these things and trying to get all these really big picture ideas meshed into one very, very confusing package. And often this would be, if you've ever been, to a restaurant and you're looking at their menu and you just think to yourself, what the heck, what's the big picture here? Like, what is the thing that they're trying to say with the food that they're making? I can remember being like that early on in my teaching too. Like, it was about throwing so many things at one time at a topic or an issue, or you jump in. You think about those moments in your first couple of years where you're at a staff meeting and you're just so happy that someone talks to you at your table. And you get in there and you just go up, and this thing, and then I learned this thing at faculty, and then I read this great book, and it just kind of goes ad nauseum for so long. And then at some point, that you sort of cue back into the fact that you're sitting there looking at X number of other teachers, and many of them. Tell me if you've ever sort of had this moment, and you sort of finally come back to reality, and they're all kind of looking at you like this, just kind of waiting for you to come down from the cloud a little bit. So I'm thinking that with the podcast, there's an ease to this. The truth of it is, there isn't a lot of extra that I feel like you and I need in order to get to this conversation. Happy to go
agree.
there.
I agree in terms of, you're right. Like this morning, there's nothing that in between is just not there right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's good to have you. I know you weren't feeling so awesome yesterday. And about, like you're talking about taking the wrapping off or whatever. What I'm realizing every day is that more and more there are all kinds of different people out there. There are some that tear gifts apart. There are some that will let them sit in a corner because they're scared to rip them apart. Like, there's just so many different types of people with so many different needs nowadays. It's like, it's kind of weird. Like, I know we're talking about it with respect to our style with the podcast and the way we get things started and stuff. But I'll be out with my family and I'll see something weird happen in a corner with a family, and I just ignore it now. Like, I mean, unless it's abuse or something, but everybody's just so different. There's so much going on. Somebody made a comment the other day about a kid, and I thought to myself, do you know the kid? Like, do you know whether the kid has special needs or has mental health issues? You just don't know anymore, right? So when people comment about the way somebody operates or whatever, it's like, I'm just getting so more focused in rather than out, that I'm just moving on past those things. So it's just neat. Everybody's got a different style. Like, I don't remember the last time I put any music onto the front or the back of our podcast episodes. And now that I'm talking about it, I kind of feel bad for you, because that might be something that you might like to have in these episodes. But then I think to myself, well, if Clough wants it, he'll either do it or he'll talk to me about it. And neither of those things have happened. So I'm assuming things are just, moving on in the right direction. But the stuff like that, like with this podcast, for me, it's the message, it's the conversation. I was just so proud that I was able to pump out a couple of episodes last week. Shortly after we had them, I was able to get them out and publish them. For me, that was a big deal. But talking to you now about, the nice wrapping around the box or whatever, you and I just got to do what we got to do to move forward.
It's and I'll wholeheartedly throw in an apology your way. I noticed that. It's a funny thing. I noticed that you pushed those two things out. I should have sent you a message and said that was cool, because part of it is there was a moment there. There was a moment there where I did realize, I was like, crap, yeah, like he got those two things. Like I think the episode 17 popped that day. That day I saw it come up on the feed, and I thought to myself, I don't even know how to frame this. I thought, I didn't think much of it, to be honest, and I probably should have, because the reason, on one hand, and I love how you start off by saying the looking at other people's contexts. I know a little bit about your context. I know a little bit about how busy your life is, and I know a little bit about also what it takes to push out an episode of one of these things. Even if you got technology doing a whole bunch of capture for you, there's still there isn't a lot of way. Sorry, you ever made a snowball? Yeah, you made a snowball. You can only compact that snow so much. You can only push it down so much. At some point, the outside starts to ice, and you're just like, your hand can't make it any smaller. And to push it any smaller, there's enough density to it that's it. I found podcasting is kind of the same way, that you can only squash it down so much before you're left with the absolute size of what it is. And it tends to be where I've kind of got to is it's kind of somewhere in the neighborhood of an hour to an hour. Somewhere in that, at least committing, even if you're not doing constant editing, just to sit down to be able to push it out, to sort of like create the link. I have to, in my mind, say to myself, if I do an hour's worth, it's probably going to be about an hour's worth of work. Whether or not you're doing the sound checking, whether or not you're adding music, those things become a little bit more of the automated easiness thing to do. It's just, if I'm going to put out a cast, I'm going to have to put an hour aside. So when I saw that popped up, and me knowing, the busyness of your life, I should have reached back out. I should have said, thanks. That was cool that you got that out fast, or at least noticed that it came out fast, because it did. And I do appreciate it. And thank you for doing that. And go.
I was going to say, no problem. Like, I appreciate the kind words. I don't need them, because you and I, like, we just know how we operate. But it was just one of those days. It was like, we finished the podcast. My son was in the room playing some video games, and I was like, hey, are you going to be in here for a bit? He said, yeah. I said, okay, I've got a couple more things to do. And I literally did. I made my snowball. It was as packed, as tight as it could be. And the basics, right? Like, I downloaded this, did that, pushed it out. It was done. And yeah, no worries. Like, I'm very appreciative of the fact that sometimes I can get it done within, 2 hours after we talk. Sometimes it takes me 5 days, right? It just happens. So I'm good with you rolling with the way I operate. I think I'm doing a pretty good job of rolling with the way you operate. Like, this morning was a bit of a gong show, right? Like, I was supposed to be somewhere. You need to be somewhere. I knew yesterday you weren't feeling so hot. And then this morning, things just played out, and here we are, right? But even that, it didn't take a lot of effort. It was like, hey, I'm not able to get to where I need to be this morning. Are you open? You respond with, yeah, let's do it. I got this time free. Here we are. Like, it's a nice place to be, right? Because I was thinking about my other podcast, and it was like days of going back and forth with people to try to figure out a time, which is fine, but everything gets pushed over, right? Everything gets pushed aside. It's like you've got a puzzle and you're trying to put together the pieces, and there's a handful of pieces that just keep eluding you. And so what you do is you ignore them, or you just put them aside and you're aware. And as you're aware of those pieces, you're still constructing. And I felt like that's what I was doing. I was like negotiating with other people and also trying to live my life and do my life, but still remain open and flexible enough for those puzzle pieces to enter in wherever they could. And I, now that I think about it, that's how it played out. And, I've spoken to people about how you could streamline that process. And to be honest with you, I didn't want to. I enjoyed part of the back and forth with the people I was going to talk to was part of building that rapport that then when we sat down to talk, there was a little bit more substance to our conversation. There was a little bit more of a connection, which to me is a good thing. And the reason why I did the podcast the way I did it. So that's just the way it was. You and I have all that going on. Like the Snowballs packed as tight as it can be at the moment until we can figure out new ways of doing things. You and I feel like our relationship is packed as tight as it can be. We can just go back and forth at a minute's notice and be like, I'm free, let's do it. So I think isn't that what we strive for with our students, is to have that snowball packed so tight that you can say to somebody, you can move on without the fluff. You can say to a kid, hey, I see what you're doing there. It's not appropriate. Let's get up and move on and not have to worry about, do I have a good base with this child to be able to talk to them in a way that they understand how I'm feeling right now, even though I've not told them. They can read between the lines because they know me well enough. We've established that. I think that that's what you and I have done over the past 17 episodes, and hopefully it continues on. But I think that's what we do with our students. I think that's what we do with people that we become close with. You just cut out a lot of that stuff, and you got the snowball wrapped tight. It reminds me, I'm kind of ranting now, but it reminds me of when I was younger and my friends were dating, right? Like when my girlfriends were dating guys, my guy friends were dating girls, and all the other combinations you can have there. I remember listening to people talk about their date. And I remember people talking about, now that with the snowball analogy, I could see some of my friends were going right. They're trying to get right to packing that snow as tight as it can be. And others spent days in the front yard rolling the ball to make it as big as they could be because they didn't want to get down to basics. Because I think they were scared of how they would feel or what would happen when they got to the core, to the bit of snowball that actually exists and isn't going anywhere. And so it's kind of a cool thing when you can get right to the point, when you can get right to the core of something. And like you and I do it with the podcasting. Excuse me. We know what to do to make it work without too much time being wasted. In the classroom, you and I are working at becoming better teachers, better able to get to that snowball core so that we can move on with the other things that exist. I think, thank you for the snowball analogy. I was able to milk it and use it in a couple of different places.
For me, yeah. And I think it's in that exact, okay, let's keep playing with this. So, I know when there was a time in my life where that snowball was not, the creation of the snowball wasn't, I had a sense of success because I had multiple snowballs, but also each one represented kind of like that perfect sphere. And it was designed to sort of travel very fast through the air with pinpoint accuracy because I was about to throw it at someone. I wasn't making a snowball just to sort of store it on the side and observe its beauty, right? I'm not making like a construction, a work of art. And, in doing that, when I think about it from that sort of point of view, is that in me throwing the snowball, I wasn't always aware of the target as it being relational. They were a target. I wanted to sort of get to that end. I like the idea of stripping down the let's say some of the, you say the fluff, some of that sort of front end of getting to the work, kind of existing in the relationship. But, you know, I wasn't making, if I think about the last snowball fight I was in, I wasn't making different size snowballs depending on what the target I was throwing it at. You know, if I were playing with little kids, I wasn't making little teeny tiny ones because I know that, you know, I'm not about to take them out with a bowling ball size kind of a thing. I was packing them all the same and just chucking them as fast and as accurately as my shoulder would allow. So I like the I like the snow. I mean, it's seasonal. It's cold right now, so the example definitely works. Part of what has been brought to mind for me, though, is that despite the efficiency of my process, one of the things that I've been accused of being curt, and it's a social disconnection, I guess, for me. I think it's also part of my personality in trying to get to an objective without paying as close attention to the process as I should. So the reminder that I ignored this week was that I was completely aware of, I was reminded on a couple different occasions, I know entirely what it takes to sort of do what you and I do just in the conversation. I'm entirely aware, and I can speak to it. If someone were to ask me, how have you arrived at what they may perceive to be sort of a sparse podcast? But the truth of it is that it's the conversation that really what we've come to. But I could completely see how that would be measured from the outside as like, whoa, I've listened to even some of your stuff and you guys have like your own theme song and, you know, there's like stuff that you add in and yours is really different. Part of this is entirely representative, I think, of our relationship and understanding of each other. I think it's also a bit of a push to remind ourselves and maybe even whoever might be our listeners that it is the conversation that matters. It's the ideas that come out of it. And I think there's a neat reciprocity there where, you know, we can have a plan, but if there's something that interests us, it's still connected to what our original intent was, which was to talk as humans, dads, teachers, and just kind of pull apart where we are in those places according to whatever snowball we're holding. And this week I was reminded of a gratitude I should have passed along, which was telling you, thanks for putting that out. But I was also on the other end, there was a conversation that popped up midweek on Twitter about supporting new teachers. And it was in that moment that I realized that the opportunity to do podcasting looks really different to someone that has never participated in podcasting before, or participated, let's say, in this type of reflective practice that you and I do. You know, just to be able to sit for an hour-ish and unpack some of to see where the spheres of home life, work life, and just personal philosophy overlap, to have this hour is precious, man. And, you know, I realized in sort of taking a virtual look at an education, a faculty of ed that's going to be bringing new teachers into the world, I had a real sense of distance from where I was as a pre-teaching candidate. And, you know, appreciating how I don't think I could have had conversations like this for a lot of different reasons, but I think primarily for comfort zone. I mean, I wouldn't have had a body of knowledge, let's say, to carry my part of the combo that much. But yeah, I had a couple reminders of how appreciative I am for having an opportunity like this on the weekly to get the stuff out of my head and into a space where others can, you know, kind of see my thinking. That's it.
No, that's good. You, as usual, you provide a lot. Then I'm not sure where to go with it in terms of what I really prioritize, but I like it's something to be able to have a dedicated hour a week, an hour-ish a week to just to reflect and talk. It doesn't always happen at work. You and I have talked about that before. It doesn't always, that 1 hour, there's no way. I'm not going to find an hour at work before school, after school, like lunch. By the time you've organized for your afternoon or done what you need to do from the morning, you don't even have an hour. Some days you don't have an hour. You have duty. So it's just interesting that I'm looking at that measurement of time and I'm thinking, wow, like it's pretty cool that you and I can carve that out consistently to make this happen. I don't even think though people understand sometimes the sacrifices that you have to make. Like I'm not an early riser, but to make this podcast work, we do it early in the morning, and um, and it's on the weekend. So like I could be sleeping, I could be doing something in the house that will benefit the family, but it's important to me if I can carve this time out to do so. And that's why I don't spend my time with intro songs or whatever. For me right now, it feels like I can give this what I give this, just like you do the same on your end, and we move forward. And I think of people at the Faculty of Education, and I think about those tweets that popped out this week. Um, I'm really happy that I saw your tweet and I was able to jump in and offer any kind of support as well, whatever. But it's just interesting that to think back to the faculty. Wow, those people have a lot on their mind. They got a lot of work to do. Their focus is like zeroed in on what they're doing and preparing themselves to become teachers. And you're right, the world of podcasting may be so new to people that they don't even know where to begin. And it's good of people like you to offer to help them out in any way that you can. I mean, you did the teacher thing. You're like, I'm here to help. Oh, and by the way, if anybody wants to come on my podcast, like you want to come and do it, you want a podcast, here I am. You know where to find me. And I really hope people take advantage of that opportunity. I hope you get a couple of hits and people say, I don't know anything about this, but I'd love to kind of check it out. And just to have that opportunity, like usually, like you just put it out there. You just said hey, if anybody's interested, let me know. I mean, that's great, right? And it's nice of you to share more time with people because that's going to take time. And it's going to take time away from the other things you'd want to do with your Chasing Squirrels podcast. But I think it's well worth it. And I think if you believe in karma, it will come back and assist you later on, which is always a good thing too. I sound like I'm out of things to talk about, but that's not the case. There's so much that I'm processing. I don't know what I want to spit out, but I like what you did with the snowballs, and I appreciate what you said about the time that it takes to do this. And I'm glad that you and I are on the same page in terms of understanding that we've got a ton of other things. I want to make a point before I let you talk again. You've said a few times you understand how busy I am. I want to make it clear that I'm not one of those people whose every minute is spoken for. I'm not that guy. Like, the people, they're so busy. They're just busy. I'm not that guy. I'm busy in that when I get off with you, I'm going to go and hang out with my kids and my wife. And, I'm going to do the dad things that you do on the weekend. I'm not the busy in that, at 10:30 I need to be here, and 11:30 I need to be on the phone with this person, 12:30 I need to be there. No, I want to make that clear because this nonsense of being busy all the time has gotten out of control. The people who are literally running around every minute of the day, like unless you're built that way, because some people are built that way that they just can't stop until they go to sleep. I'm not that guy, and I don't pretend to be that guy. I'm busy in that, like, I have things to do today, places to be with my family, but I also have the time reserved for the nonsense that comes with being a dad. And I say that in the most positive way. My kid wants to play some hockey on the computer, or my kids want to cook something with me, or they want to sit around and read, and I can complain to them about something. That's the kind of busy I'm looking forward to engaging in today, aside from hockey practice and going to pick up certain things and making the house work. I just want to throw it out there because I've got this real annoyance these days with this notion of being busy and never stopping like that. And I've read about it. People have said the same kind of thing I'm saying about the busy and how people are like booking themselves solid. And I'm not really sure what exactly their purpose is, but that's not me.
I like, yeah, it's funny. this sort of drawing attention to that. It's one of those weird things. Like you and I talking right now, I'm aware because I can see you, doing the Google Hangouts live. We can do, being able to do the FaceTime really in a lot of ways has added a really cool element to this, because I think that if you and I were texting conversations like this throughout the week, it would be one layer of getting to know you. I think if we were talking on the phone, that would be another layer, but being able to sort of spend FaceTime really does change the fluency of the relationship. And I think in doing that, in existing in this sphere, I think I do sometimes, there was nothing, it wasn't staged, the comment about that. I love that you sort of push back, because I feel, in me listening to you saying about your life, completely agree. I completely agree. Like, there's a balance of stuff I do for my kids, for my spouse, for my job, for the whole family, for the house, for the dog. There's all different sort of stakeholders that I want to spend time with. And it's funny, in me mentioning that, I almost felt like maybe that should have been a text that I sent you sometime this week, because almost saying it publicly, I get why you would push back and want to sort of reframe that from the outside in. Do you see this? One of those interesting things that happens in this reflective practice that we're doing in front of everybody is that, maybe that was a moment that I forgot that there potentially could be an audience out there listening to what they're saying, because it sets you up, or me, if it had been countered, to sort of say, now, don't get me wrong, I'm a busy guy, but I also spend time with my family. Like, you almost have to sort of set up a little bit of that defense that I am not 100% teacher 100% of the time. I am a whole person. And audience out there, let me just remind you of it. So I love that moment, because maybe I should have sent that to you just the offline. But I also like how you mentioned that, because part of it is I've seen more than enough posts and conversations where I wonder about if I wonder about the sort of like the wellness of some of my colleagues when I hear the amount of stuff and I watch the amount of stuff that they produce in relation to their job. It's like the podcast on the inside of that. I wonder, how do they get to the other life stuff? How do they make it? How do they sort of stay as connected to the people around them as they are to what they're producing for others? So I that kind of, it occurs to me. I don't spend a lot of time on it, because then usually I have to go do something for my family.
I like that, I didn't feel like I was pushing back, but I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put that. I mean, sometimes I think that there is an audience too. There usually isn't, which is probably why you and I are so comfortable talking about what we talk about. But I just wanted to be clear that my busyness is, I'm trying to be a better father, better husband is my busyness. It's like I do my job, and I'm always learning how to do it better as an educator, always kind of open to it, always reflecting on it. But I don't know, man. Like you said, there are some people you don't know how they fit their life in. Like, what they don't, is there room for life? They're always doing all these things, and I'm not that guy. That's all. Because sometimes you talk to people like, "Oh, I'm so busy." I'm not busy I'm not. My busy doesn't exist to like keep myself moving. I don't mind sitting down, putting my feet up. I don't mind at all. Some people can't do that. Some people do that all the time. Like I said, I have some obligations today that I need to be at certain places for certain reasons. But aside from that, I'm going to be with my family, right? Or something, my in-laws might call and say, "Hey, can you come help with whatever?" And I make sure it works and I go. I'm kind of what you said about your colleagues, and you wonder about when do they have time for life? Like, when do they have time for their family and whatever? Because they're always going, and they're always producing, and they're always looking at the next thing. I just felt like saying that's not me. My busy's like, if you call me at 2:00 today and you're like, "What's up?" If I'm cooking something, I'll say, "Hey, I'm cooking something. Can I call you back?" Like, I've got all this stuff going on. Or if my feet are up and my kids around me were watching TV, then I'll say, "I'm just chilling with my family. I can talk." You know what I'm saying? Like, this new busy thing where everybody, it's like a badge of honor to be busy all the time. I'm not getting that badge, because that's not what kind of busy I am. I'm hopefully getting a badge that says I'm doing okay at home, hopefully. And even that's, you know, that's off, because what I see is different than what my wife might see or what my kids might perceive. But anyway, I've taken up a lot of time with the busy thing. I just wanted to throw it back out in terms of what my busy might look like.
But you got me also thinking about, so going back to the I almost said kids, but the kids at the faculty that are connected with that tweet conversation. And it's funny because, so I saw a post. Okay, so a couple different things. Let's see if I can tie them together. So one of the faculties that was in the Twitter conversation, there's a person behind the Twitter handle. I'm assuming there's a person. I don't know who that person is, but they are fronting a large university in Ontario, and there's a person there, or persons that are managing the account. One of the things that I want to pursue is to try and find out who that person is, or that group of people are. Now, sometimes you can find that out, sometimes you can't. If it's a team that's managing a Twitter account or a social media account, sometimes they won't reveal themselves because they want it to look unified. They want the sort of the frontage to be representative of what's being spoken of, not the individual voices on the inside. I get that. So the particular university that I was in connection with, I know that as I'm having this Twitter conversation with a university, I'm thinking to myself, I want to know the people behind that veneer, behind that digital mask. In doing that, I think to myself, that's a job. Like this seems to be like, this is, whether it's a paid or otherwise, this is a job for someone to promote the university. They have a job to speak in the digital sphere, social media sphere, to communicate inward, outward, share resources, make connections. And I wonder to myself about that mandate, about what does it look like to have that job, and how do you make decisions about equitably representing the constituency that's on the inside. So this particular university is a faculty of ed, so they are representing the faculty of ed students. So in communicating with them, the veneer is that I feel like I'm somehow connecting with the faculty of ed students. So my second step is to figure out who those faculty of ed students are, because the closer you get to the bone, the better the conversation. You get to the actual individuals that are sort of in that loop. What I love about the conversation about connecting with faculties of ed and with individuals that potentially are going to be a teacher at some point is really, it really does kind of revolve around what we just talked about, is that life is way more complex than sometimes what's posted online. And I've played with this concept in a couple different ways, but the idea that, you know, what we see posted online as finished product, there's a whole lot of legwork that goes into being in that space. And if someone were to look at our podcasts apart from what you and I are talking about here, they may not see, one, they would probably see it as disconnected in some ways. The sort of the final product that you and I do in a different space versus what you and I are doing here. Because what you and I are doing right here in front of everybody is the final product. You're welcome to listen in Saturday mornings whenever we talk, or you can listen to it afterwards. There's no trade-off. You could do either. What's convenient for you? I don't know if that's the same about what's posted online all the time. And you and I talked about this a few episodes back about it's important not just to stand in the doorway. You've got to get into the classroom. You've got to be a part of that life. You really have to understand some of that grit and grind that gets you to whatever posed picture of your modern learning classroom is put on stage. And I love the fact, I love the potential to connect with faculties of ed, because if there's individuals there, or the group that choose to jump in, and heck, if someone is courageous enough to say, yeah, you know what, I'll try hosting my own episode and I can set up the room for them, then they will see quite quickly the reality of trying to coordinate that, to set aside the hour, to sort of have to make the little decisions. Oh, am I going to put, you know, Oh, can we hit pause? Oh, we're not going to hit pause. We're going to do, you know, like all the little decisions that really, you know, you and I meeting like this, some of those things are automated, but there's also different ones that you have to manage to be able to sit here, you know. And I love the possibility of introducing the concept of podcasting, because in some ways it becomes the slow practice of reflection. I had this conversation with Jen Upgar one time, as if she felt like Twitter was a reasonable tool for reflective practice. And that was when we were still at 140 characters. And even now that it's at 280, I'm not sure if it is. It strikes me as an interesting presentation tool, but I don't know if it's a great tool yet for reflective practice. I don't know, maybe if they bump it up to 420 or whatever next. But yeah, so I like how podcasting slows down. It kind of brings it, you know, where we started, like I said, brings it down from the clouds. Brings it down from the clouds, because you do have to schedule, you do have to sit, you do have to slow down. And you do, in this case, I love, interact with a face on the other side of the camera. You know, we've done the audio too, but to do this with the face, I love how it kind of just makes it so human.
I agree. And I wish you well with the faculty of Ed. I know that whoever's running that Twitter account has a sense of humor, because yesterday they posted a picture of a Star Wars picture of Han Solo and Luke Skywalker on Hoth. And they were commenting about how cold it was and to be careful out there. And I was like, okay, whoever this is, whoever these people are, they get it. Like, they're going to have some fun with it. And it's nice. It's I don't know about you, but it's nice to have a handle like that representing a large group of people, a professional body, and still be able to have a sense of humor. I think that's important. And so kudos to them. So I can't wait to hear how that plays out with you. As we were talking, Chris, I wrote something down, and I'm shifting gears a little bit. I don't want to if you're not ready. But as you were talking about the grit and the grind, I felt a small tinge of anxiety about Monday morning. So today's Saturday, and we're going back to school on January the 8th, which is Monday. And when you said grit and grind, you got to come into the classroom. You got to experience the grit and grind. I felt a tinge of anxiety, because the grit and the grind is what makes teaching so amazing. But for me, it's also the part that exhausts me to the bone. And it's one of those love-hate things. I love the grit and the grind, because that's where the magic happens. That's where you learn about your craft, and you learn about the students you work with and how to assist them and move them forward as people. But the grit and the grind is exhausting, and it takes a lot out of you. And so I wrote down, are you ready for Monday? Are you ready for Monday, Chris?
Yeah. Like, it's yeah, I won't, I hate to be, you know, to represent the, you know, I'm making it so dressed down, and I'm being curt. Yes, I'm ready. But even in doing so, part of it is, I guess in some ways I feel as if I'm answering the question that's being asked. Is there a different question you would rather ask me?
No. My question is, are you ready for Monday? Your answer is yes. That's great.
Yeah, and part of it is, you know, to anyone listening, it's like the final product. You know, looking at what we sort of present as that finished thing, there's so many little nuanced steps that go into it. So if I had my current context, but I was a second-year teacher, no, I would not be ready. So there's that, you know, because my current context is not one that I would ever wish upon a second-year teacher. I have to be honest. Like, there's just, even if you're the most hopeful, gung-ho, right out of faculty engine, you know, just high horsepower, No, there's too many little sort of pieces. You know, me being in this position as a result of a lot of different growth spaces, and you know, and being ready for Monday, even okay, let's sort of take it in. Even if I was just fluffing it up right now, saying, yeah, I'm just going to go for it, whatever. I'm just going to jump in. Even if that were the case, there's still there's an element of kind of mental preparedness. So not even, let's say, the technical preparedness of, you know, whatever lessons being ready, the room being ready, resources ready to go. Man, Monday is going to be such a human day that that's the only thing I'm really giving any thought whatsoever, is what will the human transition look like? Not picking up from the lessons. Like, I accept the fact that Monday is going to be kind of broken and bumpy to a degree, not to a negative degree. I'm just, that's what my mental set is prepared for, not the super shiny, yay, we're happy to all be back in class. I don't believe I think there's going to be some individuals that are going to be very happy back. And you and I talked about that. Some of the individuals that going home over the holidays, that wasn't a good place to go back to. They're going to be so stoked to be, they might not be showing it. And the type of behavior that they're showing it might not show that they're actually happy to be back with you, but it is actually a better place for them to be back in. And then there's going to be the other individuals that they would rather be home playing video games or, you know, sitting on the couch. I'm totally ready for the bumps and the potential brokenness of Monday. And then I move on, or we move on.
That for me is the shininess of the Monday, is going to be the bumps and the barriers. I, like you, I know they're going to be there. And for me, that's part of the finished product, so to speak. Like, I really like, I like that image that I have now, the bumpiness and stuff. Like, for me, that's going to be perfection. Because I know right now, like, as you say it, I can see the different kids in my mind. I know typically, and I'm stereotyping some of my students. I'm just going based on what they've shown me over the past 4 months. Some of them are going to be like, well, I don't want to be here. And I get that. And some of them are going to be like, I'm so happy to be back. And some of them are going to be happy to be back, but they're not going to show you that. They're going to show you in their behavior. And some of it is going to be, I've been at home and nobody's paid any attention to me. So now you're going to pay attention to me, and I'm going to get that attention in any way I can. So I'm, having done this for a certain number of years, I kind of know what to expect the first day back. And then there's always room for the unexpected, right? Because I'm sure something's going to happen on Monday that I didn't plan for. That's usually the way it goes. Every day something happens that I never planned for, never anticipated, but it's there. And I think the perfection of that day comes with the imperfection of that day. And so, like you, I'm ready for Monday in terms of I don't mind getting back to it. There's lots to be done. I want to see the kids. I want to hear their stories. I want to get back to work in terms of the things we're doing. But like you, I understand what that's going to look like. And it's not going to be everybody come in, sit down, and look at me and just ready to rock and roll. That's not what it looks like. And I know that. And that's okay. It doesn't have to look that way. I'm looking forward to reestablishing those connections, because over the break, I've not connected with one or two of my students have tweeted at our class account, but I've left it. I've not done anything with it. So I'm looking forward to just getting back into the groove and starting up. I think I did a good thing by trying to set up the new year before I left. So I don't know if I told you this. I was telling my wife, I got my room ready. So the room, like the physical aspects of school, are ready for my kids. Christmas is over, and we're starting a new month. So those things are all lined up for them. So when we come back into the room is ready for them. In terms of planning, there are plans. Like, I'm ready to teach certain things. I'm ready to talk about certain things. I'm ready to finish certain things. But there's also that space that where nothing exists, that's there, ready for them, for what they give back to me. So I'm ready to give to them, but I've also got this, it's really cool, this void exists in my brain, and the void is there because that's their space. They're going to get to fill that void. Excuse me. They're going to get to fill that void, and I'm going to deal with what they fill it with, which I think is important. And as a newer teacher, I kind of probably knew that needed to exist, but it didn't really exist. You know what I mean? Like now, with these years in and understanding the classroom as best as I can with the experience I have, it's so cool that I can talk to you about this. This is the reflection that I'm not going to get anywhere else. What's happening right now? So like I said, I'm totally planned as I can be. But if you can imagine a piece of paper with a big circle in the middle, and in that circle, there's nothing. It's empty. And all around the circle are words and pictures and numbers inhabiting that paper. And that's my brain right now. I've got that middle part that's empty. That's for them. They get to fill that section. That's where their voice exists. That's where their problems and their successes and their triumphs and their anxiety and their excitement, that's where it's all going to live. I have a home for it. And so when you have that mindset and when I have that visual, it allows me to feel like I've done everything I can for Monday. And then what happens Monday, I will have to readjust. But there's room for them. And I think that's important, that there be that space for my students.
Yeah, I love that image, the sort of it's almost like the space as a first year teacher, that that landscape that you stand in is pretty much always the same size. Your awareness of the landscape, your perception of the landscape is what changes. So whatever that bigger, broader canvas that you're standing on is, whatever you feel like you can connect with, which sometimes is just its arm's length, you start to realize how much bigger that space is, and you realize that your size doesn't change, so you need to put extra tools in there. And I love that idea of almost like, one of the coolest things that I've seen to that end is, a puzzle that I've seen my kids put together. There's a couple of them that they have where the box is actually the same size as the puzzle. So what they're able to do is they can put the puzzle box in front of them and visualize the space that the puzzle will take up in real time. Now, that's I think a support. It's an adaptive structure to the puzzle, right? Because you can scale that up and down. You can have a whole lot of pieces in a smaller box that end up making something that's massive. But I know it's really helpful for my own kids, because when they lay that canvas up in front of them, they can actually do some really neat measuring and say, well, if this is the real size on the outside, the puzzle finished picture, then when I put the pieces together, I can use it as kind of landscape markers to know where I need to move next. I think back to being the first year teacher is I didn't have any idea of scale. All I had was what was in front of me. And I didn't even necessarily at that point have the tools to be able to build myself out in order to fill that larger space. So you always feel like you're just running and scrambling and trying to figure things out. It felt new every single day, which is good, but it can also wear you down pretty quickly. So I like that what I'm getting from what you're saying is that you are aware of the scale of the canvas that you're standing on, but you feel like you've got reserves of tools that you can now put in when you need them. Not going to put them in ahead of time. Maybe some of them are in ahead of time, but you need the faces and the kids into the classroom to decide what pieces you're going to put in. I think it's a really cool bit of now and then kind of philosophical pedagogy, because it's definitely something that I did not have a grasp on that. I had to have everything. It's funny. I had to have everything in front of me for whatever happened to be thrown at me, not even recognizing that my toolkit was like 3 pieces. That's me in like year 1 and year 2. I've evolved into, I kind of know where I put those tool pieces. I'll grab them if I need them. And I'll be more open to the fact that if I make space for the kids to help me understand the tool that I need, it's way better than the one that I jump at and say, I'm just going to use that. It's just this thing. Because it's never just that thing. It rarely is.
Your talk about the faculty I think probably has caused both of us to do the back and forth thing. What we were like at the beginning, what kind of we're like now. Mm-hmm. I know at the beginning, I knew nothing. And it's funny because if you talk to me in 5 years from now, I'll probably tell you that I knew nothing now. But I feel like I have a toolbox. I know where it is. I know what tools are in it. More importantly, I know where resources exist. I know who to talk to when I'm stuck on something. And what I love about that is it's not always my boss that I need to talk to, right? I know that there are people within the building down the hall from me that have expertise in particular areas that can assist me if I feel I need to go there. And so I love that I know that. I love that in my first year, first couple of years, you still don't really know. There are some people, like I remember in the faculty, there were people I considered all-stars, right? And even when they got their job and they started working and I communicated with them, they had this thing about them, this confidence, I guess, was part of it. And not only confidence, but they had like the skill to back it up. I don't see myself that way. I never did. In fact, when I was in the Faculty of Education, I had two out of the three of my associate teachers I knew were looking at me like, this guy, what's this guy doing here? This guy's not cut out for this. And that has always kind of fueled my fire in a way, because I was never in the faculty. I was never that go-getter guy. Like, I think if you talk to the people that I went to school with, they tell you I was a leader, I was a go-getter, but that was happening when I was at the faculty. But when I was in class with my associate teacher for chunks of time, I was not a go-getter. I was more of a, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to watch how you do this and how you run this classroom. And then I'm going to jump in as best as I can where I feel I have something to offer. And that's not to say that I didn't do what they asked me to do, or I didn't fulfill the expectations and the mandate of the faculty. I did all that. So when I was told to do something, when I was told this is what I expect from you, I met that expectation in my, like, from my position. I believe I did. But other than that, there were some people that would walk into a classroom and take it right over. And that wasn't me. That wasn't me. I wasn't going to do that. And I'm not really sure why. I think it's partly my personality, partly I just wasn't going to, I wasn't going to fake that. I wasn't going to pretend like I'm going to walk in here and take over. And one of my practicums, really interesting, my best friend who wasn't in the same faculty as me, my best friend, she was in that classroom like a month before me. So I find out where I'm going to be placed. And, you know, I tell all my close friends, this is where I'm going, this is what grade I'm going to be doing. And my buddy is like, I was just there. I was just there. I was in that class with those kids. I was with so-and-so teacher. She's a great lady. You're going to love her. And she's kind of giving me everything I need to know. And I said, well, how did it go? And she's like, it was awesome. I ran the place for 3 weeks. And I'm like, what do you mean you ran the place? She's like, I walked in, I told my associate teacher what I wanted to do. My associate teacher said, that sounds great. And I literally took over. I was like, oh my God. And she's like, what? And I said, I'm not taking anything over. I'm walking in the first 2 days. I'm not you. She's like, oh, you don't have to be me, blah, blah, blah. But when I got in there, guess what? I think my associate teacher thought I was going to take it over. And I don't think my associate teacher was happy that I didn't take it over. And there were never any words spoken. It was just all gut feeling. It was all me inferring. So my baggage, whatever that is, you know, was, because people are going to say, oh, maybe you felt that way, but that wasn't really the way. Well, it felt like reality to me. So if we could honor my reality for a minute, I felt as though I did not jump in and do what the last person did. And I felt as though my associate teacher didn't really like that. And then, you know, my reports, I always passed. I didn't fail anything. But, you know, if you read between the lines reading my report, they were basically saying, like, he didn't really step up to the plate. You know, is he really in the right place? Whatever. I know I'm in the right place now. I feel great about what I do. And I would say that my supervisor has no problem with what I do, right? It's all good. Everything's working out. We're all having fun. I feel like I'm skilled in what I'm doing and I continue to learn, but it's my classroom. And so because of this, because of my experience and my way of being, if I ever have an associate teacher, I've had volunteers and I've always said to them, you tell me where you fit in. I'll tell you what I'd like you to do as a volunteer for me, but you tell me where you fit in. And a couple of times I've had people say to me, I really like this. Can I do more of this? Can you show me like this aspect of the stuff I really like? And I'm like, oh yeah, if you want to dive into that, I'm more than happy to give you anything I have within me that's worth anything to you to help you on with what it is that you like doing. I love that. I tell them right away, I'm not throwing you into anything. If I give you something to do, or if you tell me you want to try something and I put you in a situation and you feel like it's just not going to be good in a productive way, like ignore the nervousness of doing something new. But if you're doing something, you're like, no, this isn't working for me. I can't do this. I'm not effective, or I don't feel I'm effective. Tell me. I don't want to be that associate teacher that puts you into something, expects you to do something that you don't need to do. Now, have if I become an associate teacher and I have a student in my class from the faculty of ed, there are expectations that need to be dealt with, right? Like there are things that person needs to do, and there are things that I need to report on about that person. Aside from those non-negotiables, I'm wide open. Like, what do you want to do here? What is your vision? Do you have a vision? You have a goal? Because I know when I was in the faculty, when I was doing my practicums, I didn't have a vision. I didn't have a goal. I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't know where to go with anything. And a pet peeve of mine that's going to come out right now with you, Clough, and the one listener or whatever, whoever's watching, is for all three of my practicums, I was given about 3 weeks before I got there, I was given a list of the curriculum that they wanted to cover, the topics that they wanted to cover. So I went and I did my research and I found some cool stuff and I put some cool things together. And then I got to my practicum and found out, guess what? We're not doing that anymore. And I know that there's room for flexibility, but dude, 3 different placements, 3 different times, I get there prepared for one thing and I'm told, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Come on, that's not cool. It's just not. And I get that we need to be flexible and things switch around or whatever, but I've learned from that. So what I would do now is I would send my long range plans to that teacher and say, listen, here's the plan for the term. This is my plan. I don't know what order this is going to happen in. I could set out an order to make somebody happy. Like if my administrator says, I need to know when you're going to do this strand of math and this strand of math. Okay, well, I can box it all in for you if you like. But when my kids are in front of me, if they show me they're not ready for this or they're not ready for that, I'm not doing it. I'm going to move around. It's the puzzle. I'm going to leave those pieces aside and I'm going to work on the pieces I have in front of me until I can take those pieces that have been set aside and start putting them in. And so I feel like there was a lot going on that I didn't think was very fair and that I had no control over. I just had to suck it up and deal with it. And I didn't do well with that. Like I didn't do well personally and I didn't do well professionally. And I think those associate teachers will probably die to find out that I'm running a classroom right now. Maybe.
I've never had a teacher candidate. I think part of it is the spaces that I've moved through. I don't know if they're necessarily seen in the big picture from faculties. I think maybe they're being seen more now. I haven't had the opportunity. So and I'm open to it, totally open to it. I would love to work directly with a teacher candidate. I'm curious about your perspective on this. I don't know how it works to have faculties approach school boards to say we'd like to set up a relationship. Would you ever investigate, kind of do some research on the faculty to find out whether or not their approach matches with your sort of philosophy of education before you took on a candidate? Kind of knowing full well that there may be an agenda there that might be a part of that faculty that you're like, you know what, like I don't jive with that. Like that's not really, it would be too much work to sort of balance what I do and the ticky boxes that I have to work towards to support your process. Would you ever consider saying no? For me, I'll you know what? I'll take the risk first. I think I would. I would think that, and it's a funny thing because I realize that I'm stringing out the candidate because that's what's at the heart here. The kid coming out of faculty wanting to get some experience. But I also get the bureaucratic nature of this, that there are expectations. You've experienced it directly. There's expectations of the degree, and there's expectations of the classroom. Oh, sorry. There's expectations of the degree, and then the reality of the classroom. And when those two things come together, in order to keep it from being completely artificial and constructed, you know, writing to things, you know, having the checklist of things that comes from faculty that you have to answer to. And for whatever reason, this was the 3 weeks when none of that happened, but a whole lot of other cool stuff happened. And the kid's like, well, can we just fit it into that box? And you're like, it doesn't. Your experience here betrays the box. Totally betrays the box. So would you ever say no? What would it take for you to say no?
Oh, I would say no. I would say no, no problem. I apparently don't have a problem saying no these days at all. Yeah, I would say no.
I like that that's an outside in. It almost makes me think like someone's brought it to your attention. Like, Roland, you seem to be saying no a lot these days.
Well, saying, okay, well, I don't want to veer too far off where you're going, but let's start with teachers generally don't say no, like as a whole, I would say. That's why we have unions, I think, because there are some people that will just do anything and everything they're told to do. And there are people who will tell them to do things without thinking whether that would be good or bad for that person. So I would say no. I've gotten to the point in my life and in my career where if I don't agree with something or if it doesn't fit, then I'll say no. Like, that's not a problem for me. There are going to be repercussions. I understand that now. But I also have gotten past that point. Okay, let the repercussions happen then, and let's all move on. But I mean, like, the way I'm explaining it sounds kind of like conflict ridden, and I don't mean it that way. I just mean like in the beginning of my career, I said yes to everything, but I didn't have a family. I didn't have any other obligations, and I was trying to lay a foundation, a capacity. I was trying to figure myself out as an educator. I kind of know where I am right now, and I know where I want to grow. And so if somebody comes to me and says, hey, can you do this? I will consider it. And if it doesn't fit, or if I feel it's too much of a stretch, I'll say, no, not at this time. I can't do this. And then move on. But there are lots of things I say yes to. So there's a balance there. Would I take the time to research the philosophy or the position of a faculty of ed? Probably not. Not unless I had a connection. So the faculty that's reached out to the podcasting community on Twitter, whoever's running that account, whoever the people are, I already get a good vibe. So if I was working with that university, like, and my school board does, and my principal said to me, hey, do you want to take on a student teacher? I'd probably tweet out that people and say, hey, I have some questions about your faculty. Who can I talk to? Like, I feel like I could do that. I feel comfortable doing that. And if they say yes, then I could look in it. If they say no, that's fine too. If I say yes to a student teacher and they come to my class, and then I see the package that comes with them and all the things that I'm expected to cover or to deal with, and it doesn't really fit with who I am as a teacher, I think that that's kind of a good conflict to have for my professional growth. I think that's important because then it'll open my mind up to things that, why am I questioning this, or why do they think that this is important? And so I'm seeing this as a positive. I could try to wrap my head around their position and why they believe these are the things that need to happen to somebody learning to be a teacher. That's great. We'll check the boxes off. We'll make sure that I'll make sure it's taken care of. And if it's not taken care of, I'm on the hook. So there's no way that the student teacher will be penalized for my issues, in my opinion. But then I would sit down with this person and I'd say, okay, these are the things that I have to see. So like my students, these are the things that we have to do. What is it do you want to get from this? If you know, great, tell me. Let's see if we can make it work in the time that you're here. If you don't know, awesome. Let me throw some flavors at you and you can kind of see my approach, and you can see why I like my approach or why I feel it works for me personally and like from a professional perspective. And let's try to help you find your place here, right? Because that's the thing. And I don't know if you and I have spoken about this. I've spoken to somebody about this. Somebody walks into your room and you already have, like, if somebody came into my room on Monday, they would see that there are already routines and rules and rapport that's been established. And do I want them to jump in and fit right in? No, I don't. There needs to be some dissonance for them to grow, for them to learn. So come in, see how I run my ship, and then take a look at what you can do, because I'm not going to stop you. So if they tell me, you know what, I'd really like to try this with them. I really like to, can we change the seating arrangement in this classroom? Because this doesn't work for me. Like, I don't agree with this. I would say, let's sit down and have a class meeting. Like, is this about you or is this about the kids? So like, there's that whole thing too. Like, you can read about stuff and you can see other people do stuff, and then you want to try it, which is fine, but there should be a conversation. Unless it's like a safety and security thing, there should be, if you're just going to do something to people, there has to be like a really wicked reason for it, right? So I would say, well, let's have a meeting with the kids. Let's talk to them about it. You're going to have to see what it's like to negotiate with these 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, right? Because they might balk at you, they might jump right in. And then, so there's that piece, but there's also the other piece that I've spoken to my students about, the fact that there are a number of different adults that come into our room to do different things. And so when the lunch hour supervisor comes on week 2 to do lunch supervision and I leave, none of my rules really apply anymore. And none of my way of functioning with you applies. So on week 1, when I let so-and-so and so-and-so hand out the milk, well, week 2 is there's a different adult in the room running the place. They might not want you to do what I usually want you to do. And so there's that balance, that whole thing of student teacher comes in. I want them to feel like they can move in the direction that they may be comfortable with. And there are some parameters around that. But then there's also the other half. There's the students who need to be open and inviting to someone who's new coming in and wanting to try different things so that they can learn. And in the end, I believe we all benefit and we all will benefit, but there has to be that, it's got to be balance, right? Like, it can't be totally tipped one way. And if it is tipped one way, then eventually it's got to tip the other way in order to achieve balance. So sorry for taking the long way around, but no, I would say no. And if there's something, and I would say yes, I would love to do it. It's kind of like something that now, in the last half of my career, I hope that I'll be able to do. And I got to throw in the politics, right? It's like salt and pepper. I got to throw in the politics. My next administrator might believe that there's no way that I should ever have a student teacher in my room. You know, the person I have now, I'm sure she would think it'd be a great thing for a student teacher to experience my way and allow me to teach someone or to work with someone in that capacity. But my next admin could say, no way. There's no way Chidiac can work with a student teacher. So there's all that happening as well.
I'll go in reverse, only because the whole hashtag #OnEdMentors thing, part of I think about the provocation, like the thing that occurred to me when we first started doing that, is that there will be individuals that may say, actually, how do I do this? So the idea that we can skirt around faculty and, let's say, board fence lines to connect directly with individuals that are coming through, and for them to be able to reach out too, that was the whole kind of energy behind #OnEdMentors, is that we can establish direct connections and create choice for, let's say, teachers, working teachers that maybe are not as open to taking on a full-time candidate, and candidates who want to broaden their connections and build, what's very popular now as a digital professional learning network. So I think that was the whole #OnEdMentors thing. I agree. There could be leaders that look at me and say, yeah, Clough, you know what? We don't know if it's such a great idea right now for you to have a candidate in there. For me, it's like, all right, I'm still making these connections outside of the classroom and feeling like I'm having positive connectivity there. So if I'm pulling apart what you and I do a little bit for someone that's listening, bear in mind that if you are a teacher candidate, you can reach out and find teachers that are willing to connect with you and help you develop. We're not talking 10 years ago where you have to be in their classroom, which was pretty much, I think, you know, yours and my context in the starting. The only connection you had was with whatever profs you had at faculty and wherever you actually landed physically. It's very different now. You don't have to be directly in those spaces to get a whole lot of great connections going. And second to that, there isn't the boundaries that we used to have on teaching. I mean, you, as a seasoned teacher, I know that it can be quite mesmerizing to see all the possibilities out there. Like there's a ton of stuff that you can decide to include in your pedagogy and your daily life. And that door is the exact same door that a teacher candidate can walk through. They may not have context exactly to understand the bigger landscape that it fits into, but you definitely get a peek at stuff. And that was not something that was a part of my learning curve. And I like how you brought me back to the fact of my responsibility as a teacher's teacher, in that I totally get it. And I hadn't included it in my sort of my rationale, is that making the conversation part of the learning with the teacher candidate is critically important. That if they come in, you know, you bring them into your classroom, them getting to know, the kids getting to know, the teacher candidate getting to know themselves. It's not as simple as this is the thing I want to do. The learning sometimes happen is this is what I would like to do. I have to learn the process to get there even before I do that thing. And that would be definitely in my wheelhouse to help someone understand that, because that's what I do every day. It doesn't matter the lesson that I think would be great to work with any of the kids I have right now. There's a dance of negotiation there. That's the bumps and the broken for Monday, because I know where all those courses are supposed to go. I do. If I get there Monday, that's a perfect day, let's say, that I don't know if I'll repeat on Tuesday. So I go back into Tuesday with the same frame.
I hear you, man. Hey, this turned out to be a great conversation between the two of us. Somebody might be listening, think, wow, those two are off. But I mean, this is what Decoded is about. I think it's the two of us talking about things. And I love how those things, life, can be attached to the work that we do. So thankfully that that Faculty of Ed tweeted out, and look at what it did. One tweet has caused, you know, an hour plus of conversation about teacher candidates, or about us being ready for work on Monday. The snowball analogy, like I think as usual, you've given me more to think about than I need on my plate right now, but that's okay. Because when my feet are up on the couch and there's some downtime, this will come back to sit in my mind. And also when I'm freezing my butt off at the rink today or tomorrow or wherever I find myself, this stuff comes up. It's just good stuff. Because like I said, I'm not talking to other people about it. I don't have an hour to give in other places like I do here. Mm-hmm. So it's good. Thanks a lot for that great chat. And I wish you well.
You as well.
Your return. I mean, it's kind of cool, right? Like we started this in August, the week before school. And here we are in January, ready to start. I'm going to call it the second half of the school year. I know technically it's not really half, but getting through the Christmas break, or as you call it, the winter break, getting through that is like it's a huge milestone in the school year. And so now we're on the flip side. And so I'm looking forward to talking to you in the weeks to come about report cards, which I have to start writing those now, because they're due to the office beginning of February. So I need to start now. IEPs, I'm going to get hit in the face this week when I'm told, oh, IEPs are due on this day. So I got reports, IEPs, and then the regular everyday stuff. We're not allowed to just set that aside and say, oh, I'm working on my reports, I'm working on my IEPs. So I have a feeling I am going to get kind of busy with the, so-and-so has hockey, get home, put so-and-so to bed, get on the computer and start typing, because that's going to happen soon.
Yeah, a big part for me in the next couple of weeks is helping my students find their inner closer. You know, it's like in the final minutes to play in the semester, helping them close out with a win. And for some students, that can be an unfamiliar place when they've spent a semester building towards a thing and getting a real happy center to their performance, and they're enjoying where they've explored with their courses. And, you know, somewhere along there, they will start to look at their happiness associated with a mark of some sort, and helping them understand that there's still some time left for you to improve. There's still some time left for you to learn, and that you want to kind of go hard right up into the last few weeks, because then we flip into a whole set of new courses that they've never experienced before right at the beginning of February. So we finish out our semester right at the end of January. So that'll be that's the next stage.
Clough, is there any homework for this week?
I think both of us just need to get our feet planted firmly in the Monday, and, you know, stay reflective, knowing that everyone coming back is coming back with a different context. So I think just paying attention. I think much like us going into the holiday when we had our combo, it was a matter of staying centered in family. So now we're adding our extended family into it. It's just being mindful of the fact that everyone's arriving Monday with a different bag of work.
Right on. Okay, well, you stay warm on this really cold weekend, and
Thanks,
hopefully we'll be talking sooner rather than later.
For sure, man. Take care.
See ya.